Some people think this year, 2020, is a special year. We'll discuss why some might hold this view on Talking with Henrietta, coming up next. Hi, I'm Henrietta. Some people say that there are a few things that make this year, 2020, different from the past 9 years. First, it's an election year when we elect the president of this country, and second, it's a year for the U.S. Census. On this show, I'll speak with 3 guests who can knowledgeably talk about both, although they will focus most of their attention on the upcoming primary election that's just days away. My first guest, Tracy Clark, who is seated to my left, is the current president of the League of Women Voters of South San Mateo County. She is a 3rd-year League member and a 26-year resident of San Mateo County. Julie Shanson is seated to my immediate right. Julie is the Strategic Partnership Manager for the Belhaven Action, a community advocacy group in Menlo Park. She is also the owner of Find Joy in Food and a cooking instructor at the Palo Alto Adult School. Pam Jones is seated to my far right beside Julie. Pam is a retired community college professor and a healthcare professional. She is a member of several local organizations, including the League of Women Voters South San Mateo County and the San Mateo County Voter Education and Outreach Advisory Committee. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's always a joy to have you here whenever I see you or have a chance to talk with you. Now, do you believe 2020 is a different year? A special year of any kind?
I do. I think the combination of the presidential election and the census makes it determinative in terms of possible changes based on those things.
Do you agree, either of you?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a time when not only do we have the opportunity to vote and to, state our opinion on at least one thing on the ballot, it's also the census, which happens only every 10 years.
Julie?
I think it's a really interesting time, especially for us in California. We have lots of people who feel strongly on both sides of any issue, both sides of whether or not we have the appropriate amount of housing, the appropriate amount of jobs, the appropriate amount of traffic, and what our priorities should be with the money that we spend collectively as a state.
Well, I introduced you as the Strategic Partnership Manager of the Belhaven Action, but it's Belhaven Action.
It's just Belhaven Action,
yes. Exactly. And you get involved in those type of issues, do you?
Right. So Belhaven Action is a small nonprofit project that came out of the needs of the residents of the Belhaven area. Belhaven is the neighborhood just adjacent to Facebook, across Willow Road from East Palo Alto, and also bounded by 101 and by the Bayfront Expressway. So it's a very compact area, but that area that is so small holds about 80% of the racial and economic diversity of Menlo Park.
80%?
Yeah. So when we think about the needs of the residents, they're not the same as those who may live in other parts of town.
Probably across the freeway, who are more affluent.
That's what
so
we've noticed.
80% of the diversity happens to be confined in a lower income community.
In a smaller area. Would you agree, Belhaven? Some of the interesting aspects of that neighborhood, because you've been a resident for
well, almost 45 years. And that actually leads into the work that we're doing as far as voter education and outreach, because we recognize it's so important to have people vote. And so the League of Women Voters, along with Belhaven Action, was fortunate enough to receive one of the grants from a county initiative to do voter education and outreach, which includes a lot of tabling. We're working on doing door-to-door. We hope to be doing, we will be doing texting and phone calls to remind people to vote and to remind them how important it is, even if they only vote for one thing.
So Pam talked about getting a grant from a community organization, a community foundation for voter outreach. So how is it that in some areas there's voter suppression, and in other areas like this, there's money devoted for voter outreach and voter education?
What would you say?
Well, in San Mateo County, we have this wonderful organization that is the Voters Education and Outreach Advisory Committee.
Which you sit on.
Which I
yes,
sit on.
That sounded familiar.
It's known as VIOC. And we came into existence more as ad hoc in 2017, but have since become a part of the Voters' Choice Act, the whole package that the San Mateo County has to do, along with a language accessibility and disabilities accessibility group. So there's 3 of our groups. But it was through the VIOC that we really worked with the elections office and lobbied the Board of Supervisors, saying this is what we need. We can't rely only on volunteers, because in the past elections it was purely volunteer. The league, people did what they could do on their own time. So we said, no, we need to pay people, because in the areas that need to have the most outreach are in the areas where people are least likely to be able to volunteer to do the work, even if they had the time.
So, in some states or under certain governorships or administrations, that would be a good thing.
Absolutely. But even here, as progressive as we are, there are nuances. For example, under the Voters' Choice Act, you can vote by mail, you can put your ballot in a drop box, or you can go to a vote center. The language we want is that you can vote with a by drop box. We don't like the term all mail, because all mail ballot sounds like if you don't mail your ballot in, you can't vote.
Well, sometimes people thought that was kind of confusing, all mail, and they were thinking it was M-A-L-E, all mail.
That too.
Now, Tracy, you had talked about, you said this year is determinative. Was that your expression?
That was my expression.
Yes, and that struck me, determinative, really.
Well, just that there's possibilities for a great amount of change, depending on the results of the census, and depending on the results of the presidential election. Now, the League is historically and always nonpartisan. We don't support a candidate or a particular party, but sometimes we have positions where we can advocate for or against a certain policy. So, I just think a lot of things could change based on the census and the election.
Yes, it's a pivotal year. Huh?
Pivotal, that's another term.
Yes,
I've
and we
heard.
could come up with all other kind of synonyms too. Now, you wrote, talking about being nonpartisan, you wrote the grant or parts of the grant that Pam was just now talking about to get the funding?
Yes,
How
certainly.
did that come about? Tell us about it.
Well, it was a wonderful alignment of goals. The
whom?
Silicon Valley Community Foundation is administrating this RFP using San Mateo County elections money to increase voter turnout in historically low turned out precincts. Now, the League has a goal to serve all parts of San Mateo County, which includes those areas and precincts. So it was perfect. We wrote up the proposal, this is the work we already do and we need to do it better. So we would like some of this grant. And we got some of the money, which we are using along with a lot of other organizations, but we're using them for voter outreach, many tabling events for registering voters, and then precinct walking.
So is that just for the primary election or all the way through to November?
This grant cycle is just for the primary. We're hoping that our participation in it will lead to money come November or October.
Yeah, we're anticipating another round.
So let's talk about some of what you've been doing. What has the grant funded? You mentioned in general voter outreach, right? Voter education. So let's talk about some of it.
Events, tables at youth centers, libraries, farmers markets, and our volunteers staffing those. Materials, we are beginning, not beginning, but just recently, social media push and some postcard reminders to people to vote. We are so close to the primary that
oh, yes.
The conversation has kind of changed at the tables from are you registered to remember, you got to vote.
Well, the conversation you say has changed. Do you feel what you're doing has been falling on deaf ears, or what kind of reception at these tabling events and talking to youth groups, and what kind of reception have you been getting?
With one of our canvassers, we were able to do some door-to-door last Sunday, and one of the comments from a couple of different households was, there's nothing exciting. And so trying to talk to people, well, we have these other things that are on the ballot, and so it's important that you do at least one thing. Find one thing that you can be passionate about. And as a league member, doing this as a league member, I can't say, well, what about?
You can say what about,
yes, but
without saying what, vote for this.
Well, and that
can you?
But
no, I'm saying you can. Can you?
Well, not exactly, because then they want to have a dialogue about whatever the issue is.
And you can't have a dialogue without taking a position?
No.
Not really.
Yeah, we refer them to Voters Edge, which is votersedge.org.
Which is an online website that lists the candidates
lists everything.
And the measures.
Yes, and they can look at that. The other thing that we're now reminding people is that if you are not registered, you can register and vote at any vote center in San Mateo County. In fact, legislation now has it that you can same-day registration anywhere throughout the state of California.
I know, and I think President Trump wouldn't like that, would he? So
I won't comment.
No comment. No comment.
We're all league members.
I have to keep remembering I'm talking to a non-partisan. Well, at least you can say no comment.
Yes.
And many politicians used to say no comment.
I think that's an underknown fact that you can register, the day of.
Yes.
If you go to one of the vote centers.
Yeah.
Now tell me how that works. Yes, go on.
So let me just say that in this immediate area, San Mateo County and Santa Clara County, there are vote centers in each county. So for example, there are, in Santa Clara County, 88 vote centers will be open for 4 days, including Election Day. That means everyone should vote Saturday.
Yes.
Or they should vote Sunday. Or they should vote Monday.
Is this the first time that vote centers have given residents access like that? Saturday, Sunday, Monday?
Is it?
voting?
The first time in Santa Clara County.
In Santa Clara County, it's the first time. In San Mateo County, it started in the
2018.
June election of 2018.
So voters don't have to wait until Election Day. Voters can mail in their ballots ahead of time.
Yes.
And the voting centers, they can go off to voting centers from the time they open up until the election.
Yes.
Including up until and including Election Day.
Okay, now You're going to say something.
I was just going to say, you can go to any vote center in your county. That's the other thing. You don't have to go to the one in your neighborhood.
So if you work in another city, in
As long as it's
Colma,
yes, as long as it's in the same county. If you live in East Palo Alto and you work in Daly City, you can vote in Daly City. You can take your own ballot, or you can walk into any vote center in Daly City, Pacifica.
So, you know, I think it's interesting for the person who said there's nothing interesting on the ballot. You could always say, no, you might think that, but just think of all the different ways you should try out just to vote.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It kind of shakes up the historical mindset of walking down to the elementary school and casting your ballot in the same
Yes.
place. You can do it many different ways.
Yes. Now, the only thing is to be educated about the issues.
Well, yes.
Then we send them to Voters Edge.
votersedge.org.
Yeah.
The other thing is, with your ballot that came in the mail, you actually got an I voted sticker. So I have mine on my pajamas.
Where everyone can see them.
Well, where my kid can see it, so she can remember to vote. Comes in the mail.
Yes.
Yeah, with your mail-in.
We have some flyers, some graphics to talk about, and they give interesting information that at least you can talk about. So whenever the control room is ready to pull up one, we can see something. And in the meantime, can you see that? Can you see what that might say? Ah, there we go.
Yes.
So what's the if-then?
This one is for a person that either wants to change their party, their political party, or put down decline to state, but they want to vote for one of somebody in a political party. So at a vote center, this is the process that you would do. You would tell them when you arrive, and then they will give you the information that you need so you can actually change your party and then get the proper ballot. Sometimes what people don't realize is that however you're registered, that's the ballot you get.
But not now. You can change it.
Now, if you decide, I don't want to vote with the Green Party,
So, but
you can change it to something else and then have that ballot.
So suppose you want to stay with your party affiliation, but you just don't want to vote for the people who represent the party.
That's fine.
You can do that too without changing party
No,
affiliation?
you have to change parties because you only get a ballot for the party you have. Well, except I think there's a different process if you're a registered Democrat, but we don't have the information on that.
And how often can you change your party affiliation at each election?
Yeah, if you want. And that
If
used
you
to
want
be a
to.
tactic. That used to be a tactic that was used in elections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So have we kind of maybe completed talking about this particular one?
Yes.
The one, just one point on this one. It says if I am registered, I'll get a ballot. But it can also say if I ripped my ballot, if I lost my ballot, if I moved in the last 30 days and I can't find my ballot, then I can go to a vote center and they will print me out a ballot and I can vote it.
So
It's very cool.
let's lose this one for a moment. There have been accusations about people voting who should not be voting. So it seems to me, what's the approval? I mean, what's the check on whether people are actually registered to vote or actually qualified to vote?
You can't get a ballot unless you're registered, number one.
And to register, you need your social security number or the last 4 digits of your driver's license, not both. So that is the documental check. What
And
would
now
be the
you
term?
can be a non-citizen and have a social security number and a driving license.
Since they're checked by the state, every ballot eventually ends up at the state. They verify that the person is eligible to vote. So that even if you are undocumented and you have a social security, you have a driver's license, you still would not be able to register to vote. Because one of the questions on the application is, are you a citizen? So if you said you were a citizen and you're not, then you would be in violation.
A permanent residence?
Even you have to be
Yeah.
a citizen.
Resident. Okay.
You have to be have to be a citizen, and people are very honest about that. Sometimes we're filling out the forms and they get to that question because we don't ask them. You know, are you? We don't. That's not the first thing we ask them. We ask them, are you registered and would you like to?
Yeah.
So it's not until
So
sometimes.
you're saying they're very honest about it and saying, gee,
That's
I
what
Many
can't.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then,
I mean-
once you get to that point, I feel like saying, what are you going to do? I mean, if you say, yes, I am, and they feel it's going to be checked, then
Yeah,
you'll
I
be
don't-
in trouble,
Yeah,
right?
I don't
Is
think
it a
anybody's ever
felony? Is it a
I
felony?
don't know if it's a felony, but I haven't heard of anybody that actually has done that.
Well, you
Well,
know,
they
there were
said yes.
accusations in the last presidential election that there were all these people on the rolls.
But
who
nobody
voted.
found them.
Yeah.
Yes, they all disappeared. they went underground.
This tends to be a tactic
Yes.
that people who are unhappy with the result or worried that they might be unhappy with the result like to throw about. It turns out that our elections are pretty fair. The things that happen tend to be on a larger scale. They're not individuals. It's not the old Tammany Hall where you go down and roust some bums up from Skid Row and get them to come in and stuff the ballot box. It's larger scale stuff like machines and states that start with M that might be hacked. It's very,
Yes.
very, it's,
More systemic.
yes. The kind of voter fraud that actually gets perpetrated
No.
is not.
That
individuals.
reminds me of another question, and that's about computer voting. And so I'll wait with that one because we have a short video that we'll be playing soon. But before we get to that, we have another graphic that we can talk about, just in terms of process, more days, more ways to vote.
Yes.
We talked about some of that.
We've discussed some of that.
Well, the thing that we didn't talk about is that the county has decided to have some vote centers that are open for 30 days. So you could have been voting on Saturdays for a month, right? And then there are even more that are just open for 4 days. So what you see on the screen here are the 30-day vote centers.
And so if you scroll on that, if you
Okay,
look
let's
at it,
scroll down, and we can see some of the cities. Now, I
so
think
then
in
you
East-
have 11-day vote centers, and there are their locations, and then here are the 4-day vote centers.
and I think one was just opened up or will be opening up in East Palo Alto.
Yes.
Was it open in Menlo Park?
No, Menlo Parks are now open, although there's been a drop box. East Palo Alto actually has a 30-day that's at the Y.
It used to be at the Y, I think.
Did they move it?
Yeah, can you slide up? We'll look at East Palo
I
Alto.
think there's one at St.
there, right there.
Francis.
The St. Francis of Assisi
Yes.
Church, that's where it is.
Yes, yes.
Yes, and that's going to open on Saturday.
Only one. I thought maybe there were two.
There's one at the Onetta Harris Community
No,
Center.
there's a.
But in East Palo Alto, I think there are two now.
Oh, yeah, right at the Y.
And there, yes, there is one
it's
at
an
the
11-day
Y.
now.
11 day.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
And I just wonder if there's a little bit of confusion with them opening at different times in advance of the election. I was getting my coffee there this morning. There was a guy wandering around looking for the vote center, and I'm guessing he found it because it's so close to the election, but you could go somewhere and it wasn't quite open yet.
Oh, well, if you're determined enough.
Yeah, well,
and feeling
yeah.
that this is a determinative year.
Yes.
So, well, before I ask another question, why don't we just finish with the graphics that we have? We have another graphic coming up. So if we can see that one. Not that. No, not that one. I think we have a third one.
Yeah.
Do we have a third picture graphic?
Yeah, this is just a letter that I had sent to.
Yes, to know
Henrietta.
about the grant. So we can drop this. We don't need to see this one. But if you have a third one, now that might be the only one. So why don't we look at the video at this moment?
Yeah.
We have a 4-minute video, and we'll look at 1.5
This
minutes, and
video
it talks about
demonstrates how
machine
to mark
voting.
and
And here we
submit
go.
your ballot using San Mateo County's ballot marking tablet. If you choose to cast your ballot at the vote center, you will have the option to navigate, mark, and print your selections using the ballot marking tablet. Check in with a vote center representative who verifies your voting precinct and issues you an activation card. The activation card contains the ballot style corresponding to your residence. No voter identifying information is stored on the card. To access your ballot, insert the activation card into the card reader at the base of the ballot marking tablet. Do not remove the card while voting. You can customize your view using the menu at the top of the screen. Touch the language icon to change the displayed language. Touch the text size icon to display larger or smaller text. Touch the view icon to adjust the contrast of the screen. You make selections by touching the box with your preferred candidate's name. A check mark will appear next to the selected candidate. To change or cancel the selection, touch the candidate again to deselect it and make another selection. The ballot marking tablet will not permit you to overvote a contest. Navigate to the next contest by touching the Next button located at the bottom of the screen. You
You
can
to
also
all of
touch.
Okay, we're back on now. Okay. We're getting there.
Takes you to this.
Well, that video showed people how they can go in and use the computer
Yes.
to mark their ballots. Now, there is a lot of concern now about hacking.
What happens after they use the tablet is their ballots printed.
It's printed out.
Yes, San Mateo County uses paper ballots.
So really, that's equivalent to going and marking your ballot. The only thing is you're marking it by machine.
Yes.
Yes.
We had a presentation from San Mateo Elections, and basically nothing stays on the internet for San Mateo ballots.
Well, I'm thinking it may not stay, but what happens in the process?
It's only internal. They don't use the World Wide Web. It's just an internal talking to one part of the system to another.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then of course there's firewall. So there's no way, since it's not a part of the World Wide Web, that you can actually get. Well, there's a way to do everything if you
yes,
want
I'm
to.
thinking you could even have somebody on the inside.
Yeah. And and in a perfect, we wish we lived in a perfect world. So by having the paper ballots, though, that is the backup, and that's printed immediately, so that the information from the ballot would then go into the system. So it's pretty hard.
But once that ballot is printed, where does it go? I mean, it's not like a printout where the person can look at it and confirm.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And it's given to the person to at least look at it to confirm that this is the way I voted.
Yes.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is,
I know.
and it has some significant changes to the way we celebrate elections. Because we count paper ballots, the elections are not certified until 28 days after the election. So that means all that excitement that people have about who they're voting for and the issues they're voting for on the night of, all we're celebrating is that the polls are going to close at 9. We're not celebrating that the polls are going to close at 9 and someone will be a winner.
But you know what I think, given there are always predictions that are based on the percentage of ballots cast in any particular area that indicate who the winner might be. I mean, you don't have anybody who gets 80% of the votes and then at the end ends up the loser.
You do. We had a situation in a municipal board where they sat the wrong candidate because 28 days later, that was not the person who won the election.
How often does that happen?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know percentage-wise, but if I remember correctly, there was something about a parcel tax. They needed to have 2/3, and they were almost there. Then they weren't. Then they were almost there, and then they were almost ready to celebrate. But by the time they got to the 30 days, they fell just under the number of votes they needed for it to pass. And there was also with I want to say the superintendent of schools in San Mateo County, there was, the initial said one thing, and then as you moved further on in the count, you found that no, when we started counting the ballots that came in, and that it actually, the other person won. So it happens. So we just caution people, wait until all of the ballots are counted.
Well, do you know, Julie, it's interesting, as the owner of Find Joy, you've taken away the joy of the celebration.
Oh, well, I have an answer for that.
Exactly.
I have an answer. My answer is that we have, not only do we have a day we vote, but then we have a day we celebrate the election. We should
At the
call
very,
it,
very
we
end
should
of the
call
30
it
days.
Election celebration or election certification day. And then we should have parades and we should have
wait a
concession
moment.
speeches
Yeah,
and everything.
I'm thinking
We
that
should.
that would be great for the winners, but it's not a day of celebration for those making a concession speech.
I think
It's a day of tears for
Well,
the most part.
they
But
get
that's
That's always
interesting.
gonna happen.
But that's
Yeah.
interesting, right? It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it's just an interesting shift
Yes.
in the way it's done and how we view it and how we celebrate it.
So do you think commentators will now, on the basis of the early returns, try to predict who the winner is? Sometimes there
I
are
think they
enough,
will. I'm not sure they should.
Sometimes there are enough precincts that they can count.
not in San Mateo
And
County.
then in terms of absentee ballots, that's what it rests on, the absentee ballots. Would there be that many people
and the
casting
mail-ins.
absentee ballots?
Well, and you
and-
have your people that are in the military. Theirs are mailed in, but all of the mailed in have to be in within 3 days. And if they don't get in 3 days after the election date, then they won't get counted.
But what was happening at the county was that they were still counting ballots that had been cast on election day, even 7 and 14 days after the election. There were just so many. And the machine was so slow on the back end that was counting the ballots.
So now we have a new system. So that part will, it should be, that information should come through quicker, but they have to go back and they have to check. So they do random checks to make sure that the information is correct. And so that also takes up additional time. And so all counties have 30 days in order to certify their results.
So the idea of somebody hacking into the system and changing any of the votes, and that was maybe one of the theories in terms of the last presidential election, that doesn't seem possible
It's
at all.
I don't think it's a
Infinitesimal-
California issue.
Infinitesimally small.
Yeah, it's not
yeah.
a California thing.
Yeah, I think because we, and especially now since San Mateo County has the new Dominion system.
The New Dominion.
It's that
That's
was
what
the
it's
video
called. New Dominion.
It is it? Well, it's Dominion.
Sounds like
but
an
it's
old
new.
Dominion. Which would be Virginia.
It's a new
Oh.
system, the Dominion system. I'm not sure of the exact name, but
I think it did say Dominion.
Yeah, it is
Yes.
Dominion. I don't know about
Yes.
new. So I think that that the system is safe as it can be, and at some point, we have to admit we have done the best that we could. We've looked at all the options, and we've closed all the doors that we can find. And they probably have people that try and break into the system. What do you call it? Hire hackers?
Hackers.
Hackers, yeah,
They're
hackers.
just hackers.
So it's going to be as safe as you can. Now, how they do it somewhere else,
Ah.
see, we don't know about it, what system they're using in Santa Clara County or, California's pretty safe. I mean,
So it seems you may have taken the joy away from the celebration, but you've also taken away the excuses that people have
Yes.
for not voting.
Yes.
Yes,
There you go.
and especially people who say, why do we vote on a weekday? Because you can vote on a Saturday. You can vote on a Sunday. This weekend, vote Saturday.
You can.
Up until the polls used to close at 8 o'clock on election day.
let me look that up.
Do they,
they
still? Yeah.
I'm looking
Yes,
at Pam.
yes. Let's
say
see
the
here.
hours?
It doesn't say the hours on here. I think they close at,
Voting centers.
smcvote.org. All of your answers
Okay.
on that website.
all the things that I don't remember.
Well, too bad we can't go look them up right now.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We'll find out. What kind of responses do you think I mean, it's one thing to have a system that gives people every opportunity to vote. Any ideas in terms of how many people will actually take advantage of it?
like,
mean-
how is the turnout going to change?
Yes, how might it?
Increase?
Yes. I mean, you're in low income areas, for example, where people might have 2 and 3 jobs. Now they have more access in terms of voting. How
think
do
it
you
will-
create interest?
Yeah, it's an intuitive answer for me. I've been at the tables and so on, and people are interested to talk with you, and I've been in high school rooms. Yeah, with all that's going on, I got to register. That I get that response quite a bit. So I don't have a sense of how much, but I think it will increase turnout in the precincts where we're working. And in general, I think it's going to be a high turnout year.
Sure.
And I think going to somebody's house and telling them that they're important.
There you go.
I believe that that's enough, because how many times has somebody come to you and said, you know, you're really important and I need you to participate. You know, because your participation, your voice matters with the issues that we have. You know, and that's a different narrative
It's a
too.
powerful message,
Yeah.
that one right there.
Yeah.
Well, it's a powerful message. Do you think the person who says there's nothing interesting will buy it?
I think these did, because of the dialogue. Sometimes all people want to do is to be heard. They want to know that somebody cares enough about what they're thinking that they would spend a few minutes having a conversation. You know, and so I'm very, you know, I feel fairly assured that they will. One of them had kids in college, and they had made sure they got their ballots in, and so they said that them and their wife, that they, you know, would work on it the weekend. And I said, I know where you live, and
What did that mean? I'll be tracking you.
And actually we could. I mean, this is what candidates do, is they can get a printout of who has voted. And then you start contacting the people that still haven't voted yet to get them
How
to
do
the
you
polls.
contact them?
Texting, phone calls, yeah, but mostly texting.
Knocking on doors.
And then the last is knocking on doors, yeah.
You remind me of a telephone call I had today from one of the presidential candidates. And let's see, I didn't even pick up the phone. I mean, I didn't even answer. But I heard this recorded announcement that this was something that was live. You're now live with such and such a person. And I pressed stop. I couldn't even press, and I thought, how intrusive. I couldn't press stop. And so I had to press answer and then press off. And I'm thinking, what nerve.
Yeah, that particular person has called me.
Oh, you've had that
I've had
happen?
that call. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Now, I happen to be sympathetic to that candidate, but at the same time, I'm thinking that could turn a lot of people off.
I find that if you're the kind of person who likes to be interrupted, I think it's a good strategy. I think if you're a person who likes to be invited to something with time to plan, maybe not so much. So that's.
So what did you do? Did you
I
hang
hung
in
up.
there? Oh, you hung up. Why?
Well, it was during dinner.
Oh, I
I mean,
see.
we were going to eat in about 10 minutes, and so please hold. Well, I can't hold.
Oh, well, I wasn't even asked to hold. I was just told you were now live
now
with this
live.
particular person, and the person started talking.
Wow.
Well,
My
And I
goodness.
hadn't even answered the phone.
Well, the phone interferes
Yeah,
there.
and we won't do that when we reach out by texting and by phone. We won't do that.
We
We'll
won't
say,
do
you know,
that.
we're the League of Women Voters. We just want to remind you to go and vote. You know, if you haven't done so already. So if it comes from us, it's encouraging you to get out there and not twisting your arm.
So let us talk about the League of Women Voters for a moment, just in terms of,
Who we are?
well, things change. Things change politically, the environment changes politically. What about the reception, public reception public perception of the League of Women Voters.
Absolutely.
Have you found that to be changing? Or
Yes, in various ways. I was talking to a member last night she's a 40-year member, but when she lived in the South, she didn't belong because it was all the politicians' wives, and it was all about getting a certain person in office. So she didn't belong for those years, but she's belonged for many years out here. I think it has been an affluent white ladies club that is changing. This grant will help change it. Our presentations in high school classrooms will change it. We've been talking to a lot of high school kids. But for a lot of people, it is still the good housekeeping seal of impartial, nonpartisan information.
well, I'm thinking names change, like League of Women's Voters.
Oh yeah,
Men are invited, aren't
that's
they?
true.
Absolutely.
We're depending where you are, maybe 8 to 12% men at the moment, and the average age is dropping.
What has it been in the past?
I don't know.
60-year-olds or?
For average age, I don't know.
But you said the age is dropping.
Yeah.
We're seeing younger members join.
Younger members joining.
Really young?
Not 18.
No, but really young to some of us.
When I joined the league, the board was a group of older women, and now we have young professionals, men and women, on the board. It's a board of 14 in South San Mateo County, so I'm basing it on that. It's an anecdotal statement.
Sure. Any thoughts of changing the name from as things become more inclusive?
That has been studied, discussed, and at the moment there's not, just because there is such name recognition for it. I mean, that's about all I can tell you.
What about your activities? How have they changed, or have they?
Well, we didn't used to present in high school classrooms, and we have not done enough work in North Fair Oaks, Belhaven.
Places for lower income residents.
Yeah. So that's how it's changing, is what I would say.
And in terms of this election, we haven't had the election yet, but I'm thinking once it happens, you will probably would there be any examination of what worked or what you might need to do?
Yes.
And any thinking along those lines now as you hold events and talk to people?
We have literally a data scientist on the voter services team, so he's going to have this by the numbers, and we will look at them and what they teach us.
And so what have you, just in terms of any insights, in terms of the activities that you've had in learning about the new system of voting, communicating it to people, any ideas of what can be improved or what's working now?
For me, what I see is we have to find a way to be able to have paid canvassers, people from the community, particularly, our area is East Palo Alto, Belhaven, and North Fair Oaks, but people that live in the community that can talk to their neighbors and give the information that we're giving. I think that'll make a difference. It makes a difference with political campaigns. And I think a disadvantage this time is that we had to move very quickly, and we have brilliant ideas. So when we go back and do the assessment and then send the information to the funders, then we'll have a better idea. Well, this worked, this didn't, and this is how we can improve. Here.
This grant was put up very quickly, and both San Mateo County elections and Silicon Valley Community Foundation, recognized that. Like, this is fast. Here's what it is. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be assessment, joint meetings, discussion, and analysis.
Julie.
Yes.
Any comments?
Well, from if I could wave a magic wand, I think that I would make participating in public service more attractive to folks in this area by making it a living wage so that you didn't need to be a great fundraiser or to be independently wealthy to be a candidate.
Well, is that after you get elected? What
No,
about just
No, I mean,
out campaigning?
I mean, well, yes, I think that there's, we see the results of the income inequality in every facet of life here, and public service is just another one of those facets of life.
So you're saying being a candidate, you should get paid a living wage for being a candidate?
I think what I'm saying is that we have to find ways to encourage people who aren't currently showing up in our representative democracy to participate in that representative democracy. There are a lot of different ways that we can make that happen.
Do you know, it's interesting, you remind me of the title of an article that went more or less, why is it that there aren't so many humble people who are actually qualified and can make a difference running rather than those who are
That's an interesting
That
question.
is, that is. Yeah. You know, what I wanted to say about, to add on to what Julie was saying, an example would be part of our funding is to hire people to do canvassing. And it's a pretty decent amount of money, and there's a ceiling on how much you can make.
like with the census?
Like with the census, only our process is much easier than what the census process because of that short window. So what I would like to see is where we have some permanent staffing
Who
in
would
the
pay
canvassing
for
area.
it? Who would pay for it?
I may get in trouble for saying this, but we live in one of the most wealthy areas in the world. So there's plenty of organizations that if they were committed, like the Silicon Valley Foundation, if they were committed to civic engagement, they would be knocking down the doors to figure out how to put something like that together so that you could be paying people to do this kind of work up until the election at the $25 an hour, the $30 an hour, range. So
If you're operating within a system where there is an attempt to get more and more people empowered, if you're operating within a system where there are, and for lack of a better word, elites that are holding on to power, then that's not a system that would be especially inviting. That's what we would think of in terms of a true democracy, would we?
Yeah. Although for this part, I just want people to know what their possibilities are where they live, and to recognize how important it is to vote and to vote.
Is there anything we have left out that's important in terms of the primary election coming up?
I don't want to. I kept this here. If you mail your ballot in or put it in a drop box, be sure and sign it.
Ah.
Yeah, so that's
Very
I kept this out. Be sure and sign this because people do forget, and then that's another piece that slows down the count because the county does try and find these people to get a
good.
signature. They work very
Good.
hard to do that.
Do you want to hold it up again?
Oh,
I don't
do I
know.
need to hold it up again? There's a big X there. Whoops, over there.
Anything, Julie, that you can think about or think of to share that we may not even have discussed?
No, my 2 points are vote Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you can't vote Saturday, vote Sunday. And wait to celebrate.
Wait, yes.
There we go.
Or for those who would
like
like to
that.
believe the early returns. Yes, Tracy.
Yeah, I was just about to tag team on something Pam said. We are a volunteer organization, so learning from various people that paid precinct walkers are going to make a difference in certain places. That's new for us, and we're working with it and learning how to do it.
Ah, yes. The League of Women Voters can't raise money, can you? To pay precinct workers, walkers.
It's never been a discussion, has it?
Yeah, we're working out a way to do it.
I mean, you did write a
modestly.
grant
Yeah.
that you received from the organization, right?
So, and we can do it with
As
some
an
of that
advocacy
money.
group. And I'm thinking this is only the primary. The November election is coming up, and I would think whatever you could learn from this one could be applied from the time of the
Absolutely.
primary to the next
Correct.
November election.
Yeah.
That is the
Absolutely.
plan.
That's the plan.
And we'll know so much more.
Yes, and we'll follow up with you.
Yeah,
Please,
absolutely.
Yes, yes.
I do want to have you back and talk
Yeah.
about whatever lessons learned and what
Right.
came out of it and what you all
Lovely.
might be
Yeah.
doing in
Lovely idea.
preparing for the upcoming election. Now, I introduced you as also knowledgeable in terms of the census. Anyway, you
one-
don't have to be a citizen for the census.
That's what I was just going to make sure got said.
Oh.
Yes, because in the areas where I've been, people are a little nervous about that. For the census, you do not have to be a citizen. Very important that you get counted. It is money taken from schools, roads, all kinds of things for every person who's not counted,
So-
even the babies.
People might back out when they find that you have to be a citizen to vote. That you will be, somebody will find out, the government will do double checking. But what do you tell people who might be leery if they're not citizens of participating in the government process?
That they're separate. You do not have to be a citizen to be counted.
It
You
will
have
not
to be
be-
living here.
Correct. And you can look and see what the 10 questions that they're going to ask you on the census are.
You can preview them.
You can preview the questions, and if you fill out your form that comes to your house, it's going to come the first week in April. No one will come to your house if you fill out the form and send it back.
But you still have to sign your name, right? You're not anonymous.
No, you're not. No, you're not anonymous.
People will know who you are, and the fear is that you'll be in the system somehow, and that name will be given to ICE or whomever.
And I appreciate
And
that.
people might be knocking at
Yeah.
your door later down the road.
If I wasn't doing the work that I was doing, then I might be one of those people that wouldn't fill out the census simply because there's so many what ifs, and what ifs. But now it's too important not to be counted, and I'm willing to stand up and take that chance of there being a repercussion. I don't believe there will be in our state.
You're willing to stand
Well,
up.
I'm willing to. So I just want to share that I do understand that, and this is so critical. At least in California, there's as many safeguards as there can be. There are only 10 questions, no citizenship question. If anybody's come to, we found that there's been people saying they're doing the census, and they're go to people's houses and ask them questions, and some of the people mentioned to me they felt uncomfortable. That's not the U.S. Census. If anybody's gotten anything, the U.S. Census does not start until April 1st, and it's not April Fool's Day for this.
There you go.
And you have a choice. You can either do it by mail, do it on a computer. You can do computer if you don't want to mail it in, or you can do a phone call. And
I think you can even text.
that I don't know. You may be right. And there's language accessibility, and yes, it's supposed to be as safe as it can be. And I believe that the people that have been coming to folks' door, they're finding out the information that is not going to be on.
They're scamming.
That's not going to be on the true census.
So there is information that you're not supposed to give, like income, Social Security, and very personal, private information.
Yeah, there's some
So if anybody's asking that, you know that they're not truly representative of the census.
As Julie said, the only way they'll come to your door, and that won't be until I think it's May, is if you don't fill it out. So if you've done anything before April 1st, it's not the official census. And I think that's what's
That's good
important
to
for
know.
people. Yeah.
So
It's
is the League of
important.
Women Voters getting involved in the census in any way?
Yeah.
We have census information at all our tables. That's the involvement right now.
And I know that the census office here in Redwood City is still looking to hire people
Yes.
for the
Thank you.
census. And you only need a green card. You do not need to be a citizen to work for the census. You need to be over 18 and have legal means of being in the country. But if you know anyone who wants a job during the month of May, it's a good job, and we need more
job.
people who can go out and speak the languages of the folks who live here.
There you go.
Well, you're very, very involved when elections are coming up. What about when elections are over? Or between elections?
We sponsor maybe fewer voter registration events, but certainly part of our realm is issues of importance to the democracy. So we will sponsor programs on issues, on upcoming legislation or issues. It's just not as big a push.
Not as big a push, but it's ongoing.
Yeah,
It's ongoing.
ongoing.
Yes. So, yeah.
So are you working election night, doing anything in particular? We know you're not celebrating because it's not a
Yeah,
time.
not yet. Not yet.
Yeah. I personally will probably go to local poll and just thank people for coming and
Oh, lovely.
yeah, because I probably know most of the people just to see how things are going, and that people know where it is that last minute. And I believe this show's going to really help because we are a last minute society in many ways.
Oh,
And
yes.
so they'll be watching it. And it's also, since it's on Facebook, on some of the sites that cover the areas that are target areas. So that's hopeful. But I'll probably be at the polls, and then I'll go to sleep as soon as they're over with.
Yes, because it's
just gonna
been
go to
very,
bed.
very demanding.
I'll be in Belhaven this weekend, but I won't work election night.
Yeah.
We have a party for our volunteers and poll workers a couple days after.
Well, we will celebrate one way or the other when it's time, and I'd like to at least celebrate you for the information that you've given.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I'd like to thank our viewers for watching. Until next time.
All right.
So I am wondering now, celebration time. Are you celebrating?